Endangered Species is the title of our conversation this morning, drawing it from the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verses 1 to 15. It is a strange thing to talk about endangered species because some of them are such lovely creatures that it is sheer panghihinayang on our part that these animals and plants, for that matter, are growing into extinction, thus being included in the list of endangered species. Endangered species is a list of plants and animals which are now going into extinction. Cite, for example, the pawikan. In the Philippines, the hawksbill sea turtle is a great fashion piece when they get their shell, because they are turned into bags and jewelries that are a big hit in the Philippines and abroad. Thus, the hunting of the pawikan has deemed the animal an endangered species, almost actually drawing near into extinction. The tamaraw. The tamaraw only has 350 left in number. The original beast of our work beast of our forefathers, but now has left almost in extinction. The Philippine eagle, the monkey-eating eagle, is one also deemed nearing extinction. Man was the cause why these animals are not only endangered now, but almost nearing extinction. Some of this we will all read in the near future only in Wikipedia or in encyclopedia or even in the pictures in Google. Why? Because man, in our desire for progress, has now killed the habitats of these animals and even plants. That these animals are now being raised and reared inside fences. Why? To be able to preserve them, to be able to propagate them again, so that they will not run out. But sadly, another thing that is deemed endangered nowadays is the family. The family, I dare say, is now an endangered species. There are several of us who have become victims of the endangerment of the family. Do you know that where the word family came from? Where the concept of the family came from? The concept of the family came from God Himself. In Genesis, we already read that God created human beings in His own image. In the image of God, God created male and female. He created them. And it was God's desire for male and female to join themselves together, to be fruitful and multiply, in order to create the basic unit of society, which is the family. But sadly, today, the definition of family has become so diverse that none of us can catch up. Right? Nowadays, a family unit has become so different from the original design that God has instituted it to be. That is why I dare say that today the family is in danger of going into extinction. Some of us were raised by single parents, and yet we call that a family. Some of us come from blended families, and we are raised by not one, not two, not three, but 4 parents. Right? The definition of the family is now very diverse. Why? Because of man's desire for progress, that even the family is now going into extinction. So allow me to bring you to the book of Joshua in chapter 24, where he will rally behind that concept of the family, just so it will be propagated and propelled throughout history and up until now. And it is my prayer that as this happens, we will all be able to understand and make that choice to protect the family by which the Lord our God designed it to be. And if there's one thing that I would like you to take home, it is this: that a pact with God makes an impact with the world. A pact with God was something that Joshua stood for and did. It is a covenant that he is making with God, as God has covenanted with them. The people of Israel during that time has just left Egypt and now has gone into the promised land. And Joshua is reiterating that promise, that covenant that they have with God, because he knows that it is with the fulfillment of this pact that they will make an impact to the world. And that is our desire as well. If we want the family to propagate and be protected, then we need to make that pact with God so that we will make an impact with the world, in the world, sorry. So let's start. Joshua chapter 24, starting with verse 1. Joshua called together all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. Joshua was almost at the end of his life at this time. He was at retirement time. He has finished his reign. So he calls for a State of the Nation address. He calls for the whole tribe of Israel, and everyone who mattered in Israel was there. He called for the elders, the chiefs, the justices, the judges, the officers, and they presented themselves before God, and Joshua addressed the people. Joshua is one great leader in the Bible, and his leadership happened at a very difficult situation. Why do I say that? He comes after a very good ruler, a very good leader, and that was Moses. And who was Moses? Moses was able to lead the people out of Egypt. Moses was able to part the Red Sea through the Lord. And Moses was speaking to God personally. And where was the State of the Nation address? The address was held in Shechem. And what was Shechem? If you will remember, this is the place that God met up with Abraham and telling him, this is the promised land. So as if to remind them of that happening, of that incident, Joshua meets with all of Israel in Shechem, as if reminding them and saying to them, this is where the Lord's covenant was fulfilled. And he continues, and he starts telling them, this is what the Lord God of Israel says. Long ago, your ancestors, the Israelites, had a penchant for listening for their history. So Joshua gives them History Class 101. And he starts off saying this. A long time ago, your ancestors Terah and his sons Abraham and Nahor who lived in the river Euphrates, worshipped other gods. So Joshua was now rattling off, this is where I met Abraham. Who was Abraham? Abraham was an idol worshiper himself. And as an idol worshiper, it was God who went down, coming down, and met up with Abraham. And what did Joshua say? I led them over to the land of Canaan. That was the promised land. I led Abraham with Terah and his brother to here, right here. That's what Joshua was saying. God said, I led them here. And he multiplied descendants. I gave them Isaac. You remember that Isaac, Abraham wondered how he was going to be multiplied as much as the stars in the sky, but I gave him Isaac. And after that, after Isaac, I gave Jacob and Esau. And you know, those brothers, they weren't in a very good relationship. So Esau left for the mountains of Seir and took that as his home, and Jacob and his sons ended up in Egypt. You remember how Jacob and his sons ended up in Egypt, right? It was because of Joseph, the interpreter of dreams, because of the famine in Egypt, brought them all out of Canaan and brought them to Egypt, which was not their promised land. And after that, I sent Moses. For years and years and years, they were enslaved under Egyptian rule. And these people who were with Joshua did not know how to live on their own anymore. Because they've been so used to being slaves, they did not understand how it is to run their family, much more run their land. And that was what Joshua did. I sent Moses and Aaron and brought you out of Egypt. Do you remember? I sent plagues. Do you remember that the Nile River turning into a pool of blood? Maybe God was saying, well, that was cool, right? All of a sudden, the Nile River started turning red. They got scared, but Pharaoh still did not let you go. So God, through Joshua, was reminding them what has happened in the past. And then you came to the sea. I brought your ancestors out of Egypt. You came to the sea, and the Egyptians, in hot pursuit, brought you in front of the Red Sea and the mountains of Egypt behind you. You did not know where to go. You were at the edge of the Red Sea. But what did I do? You came to the sea with the Egyptians in hot pursuit, to the very edge of the Red Sea. And then you cried out for help. And what did God do? God parted the Red Sea, and I can imagine Joshua saying, that was cool. Right? Imagine before you is a sea. You don't know where to go, but God parted that. And Joshua was reminding them of this very cool event. And then you lived in the wilderness for a long time, 40 years. These Israelites were just roaming around the wilderness, going back and forth in such a very small land. If you will look at your maps behind your Bibles or through Google, look at the journey of the Israelites in the wilderness, you will see that it is just a small place that you can just actually go cross in about, as they say now, it's about 40 days. But during that time, for years and years, for 40 years for that matter, Joshua was reminding them, you had a wilderness experience and you stayed there for a long, long time. And then Joshua reiterates, and I brought you to the country, the Amorites, who lived in the east of the Jordan, and they fought with you, right? You were fighting. You had a battle with the Amorites. But what happened? I destroyed them for you. Yes, mga kapatid, the Israelites were not free of battles. But time and time again, the Lord would deliver them from it. Parang tayo din ngayon, diba? There are battles that we fight every day. We're not free of battles. We're not free from problems. But time and time again, the Lord relieves us from them, right? The Lord destroys them for us. That was God's covenant to His people. Because the Israelites are God's favored people, right? Parang tayo ngayon. Being grafted back into the vine, we are now God's favored people. Amen? And God's covenant with us still is happening. And He continues. You remember Balak, the king of Moab? He got ready to fight with Israel, starting with fighting to come and curse you. You look at this. You take note of this, because Joshua was reminding them, but I wouldn't listen to Balaam. God wouldn't listen to anyone. Why? All of those gods with a small g, God cannot be overpowered and overcome by them. And what did God do? That Balaam was asking me to curse you, or Balaam was cursing you, but his curse ended up blessing you over and over and over. I saved you from him. So God was reminding the people of Israel that all of this journey, though difficult as they may have seemed at that time, I saved you. The blessings of God in our lives cannot be overturned by nothing. It cannot be overturned by anything, because God's blessings for His people will always prevail as He has promised. And then what happened? You cross the Jordan River. The Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, lahat ng ites na mahirap sabihin, I turned them over to you. You remember? You won over them. Time and time again, you battle, may kaaway ka, I turned them over to you. I handed you to a land which you never worked for, to towns you did not build. Joshua was reiterating the blessings of God upon His people. Isn't that exciting? And here you are now, living in them, eating from the vineyard and the olive groves that you did not plant. Sana ganito din tayo, diba? Joshua was reminding his people, these are the blessings that God has given you. Be reminded. Remember that as God's covenanted people, here He is, being true to every word that He has uttered from the time of Abraham, when God said, you will be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Abraham couldn't see, but Joshua was saying God fulfilled that. In spite of the fact that only Joshua and Caleb among the 10 spies saw that it was a land teeming with milk and honey, here you are. You can see that for yourselves. Yes, the grapes are gigantic. There are giants. But God delivered you from all of them. And Joshua was reiterating, sana ganun din tayo sa mga anak natin, di ba? Let us remind them of God's graciousness, God's faithfulness. Anak, naalala mo nung nagkasakit ka, wala tayong pera noon, and yet the Lord provided. Anak, you remember when we were having problems, we didn't know where to go, the Lord gave us wisdom, as He has promised. What you are going to declare to your children is going to need to come from you. Let us proclaim, let us declare. As Joshua was doing here, he was sharing and declaring to his people and reminding them, look, Israel, this is what God has done and has been doing in our lives. His faithfulness never waned. Did you notice something there? Joshua was stating everything that God did for Israel. Right? He was reminding them what God did for them. Hindi niya napansin, hindi niya binanggit yung mga kapalpakan ng mga Israelita. Hindi isinumbat ni Lord, diba? God never took that against His people. He never said, nun nga ibibigay ko si Isaac, si Sarah, she kept on laughing, diba? You remember, you were going around the desert. Why? Because tigas ulo kayo eh. God did not say that to them, right? No, God just stepped on that point and told them, this is what I've been doing, anak. Do you remember? This is what I have been doing in your life. And sana ganon, diba? Si Lord, binigyan ako ng trabaho, kulang naman ng sweldo. Binigyan na nga, nanumbat pa. Diba? He just stood and told them, this is my faithfulness to you. I have been true to my covenant promise with you. And God will continue to do that up until today. He has remained faithful to us. So now, it is now Joshua's turn to speak. The first portion was God's message to His people through Joshua. And now Joshua speaks. So with all of these promises that God gave you, with the faithfulness that God has showed you, what do? Joshua challenges his people and tells them, so fear the Lord. When we see that word fear, parang ang nasa isip natin, may multo na fear. Diba? It's terror. It's scary, being scary. But that's not what fear here is. The fear that is being said here is deep respect and reverence. That you revere and respect God so much that there is nothing, that your reaction towards Him will be nothing less than obedience and fulfillment of your covenant pact with Him. That when you fear the Lord, there is that inner sense of obedience in you that will propel you to shut out everything and just say, yes, Lord, I will obey. Yes, Lord, I will follow. That is the fear of the Lord that Joshua is calling his people to do. And when we see that word so, or therefore, and now, be ready because there is a command, that is something being told to all of us. Fear the Lord. That is what Joshua is saying. This should be a reaction to God's promises and fulfillment of His covenant on His part. For God's faithfulness, fear the Lord. That is what Joshua is saying. It is religious practice of the father of the family that above all determines the future attendance at or absence from the church. The fear of God is that inner devotion that is better caught than taught. So now allow me to knock upon the daddies, the granddaddies, the grandpapas, our young men, and our youth na men. O men na kayo, hindi na kayo boys. Because the fear of the Lord is something that is caught, better caught than taught. It is going to be more than sitting down and talking to your sons and your family about. It is going to be more than a Bible study or a devotion time. Because the fear of the Lord is something that has to be shown. It is going to be more than lip service. It has to be actions that are emulated and shown. And daddies, you have to take headship of this. Why is that? We have now delegated praying, the spiritual leadership of the homes to moms. Why? Because daddy is busy outside at work. Late na dadating si dad. Wala nang time to tuck in the children and pray and read the Bible. In front of the dinner table, pagod na si dad. Pagod na si papa. Sige, mommy, pray ka na. So mommy prays. But do you know, statistics show that if father and mother attend church regularly, 33% of their children will end up as regular church attendees. And 41% will still be attending church, though irregularly. If the father is an irregular attendee of the church and the mother is regular, only 3% of the children will go and attend church regularly. And if the father is non-practicing at all, only 2% of the children will become regular church worshipers. Dads, I implore upon you to take the headship, the spiritual headship of your families if you want to preserve this species called family. The task of preserving the family is upon your shoulders. Spiritual leadership, as Joshua has called, the fear of the Lord is something that you need to show. It is something that you have to take on. To salvage the family, dads, take the lead and fear the Lord and serve Him wholeheartedly. Joshua is saying that Serve the Lord wholeheartedly, not a portion of it only. Do not keep anything apart from serving the Lord wholeheartedly. And that means including your daily lives. Remember what Paul said, in anything and everything that you do, give glory to God. Anything. That may be walking on the street. That may be sitting down there. Make your life matter by serving the Lord wholeheartedly. And that was Joshua's challenge. God, this is the thing that God has done. From Ur to Canaan, this is what the Lord has done. So now it is our turn. Fear the Lord and serve Him wholeheartedly. That is now the family's task. What did Joshua say? Put away forever the idols of your ancestors worshipped when they lived in the Euphrates River. That was on the other side of Canaan. It is so amazing that Joshua presents his position and tells them, okay, eto ang ginawa ni Lord. These are the things that God did. This is the thing that you should do. Fear Him and serve Him. But if that is still not good enough, if what the Lord has done is not good enough, then choose which one you want to do. He says, if you still refuse to serve Him and fear Him, what do you want to do? You want to go back to your gods in the Euphrates? Sino yung God doon? Sino yung God sa Egypt? The sun god, the moon god, the water god, the river god, lahat ng klaseng god. Or you want to worship the god of the Amorites? Sino yon? The sexual god, the fertility god, and all of those sensual gods are the gods of the Amorites. Do you want to serve them? Do you want to serve the God of Egypt, or do you want to serve the God of the Amorites? Joshua was presenting his case. I have already told you that God, that my God, the God that we know, the God of Israel, is faithful to you. But if you refuse to serve Him, then choose today. Make a choice. Pero sasabihin natin, Sister Barry, hindi ko siya pwedeng iwanan. Ikamamatay ko. A moment of joy compared to an eternal flaming, burning sulfur? Yan po yung maliliit na gods natin with a small g. Is it the work that God has given you, that you prayed for and said, Lord, if you give me this work, I will forever serve you. Binigyan ng work, nakalimutan si Lord. Lord, bigyan mo naman ako ng boyfriend. Mag-golden years na. Mag-golden girl na. Binigyan ng boyfriend. Mali naman. And you say, I cannot live without him. Yes, you can. You've lived 50 years without him. You can very well let go of him. What are the little gods that we have? Are we still serving the God of the Egyptians and the gods of the Amorites? Because mind you mga kapatid, meron po talagang namimili sa other sa other small gods. Because they cannot fear the Lord, they cannot obey the Lord, and they cannot serve Him wholeheartedly. And there, He makes His stand. As for me and my household, that means his family, his immediate family, his extended family, his all of those that had Joshua in their family. He's standing up for them and telling them, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. As for me and my household, Joshua has made that stand. Standing not only for himself, he could very well have said, basta't ako, ewan ko sa kanila. Basta't ako, I will serve the Lord. But no, he took his whole family with him. He could very well speak for his family because he knew them. He knew, because he knew that he was leading them well, and that he has propagated and performed his role as the spiritual head of his family. And he is now declaring to one and all, as for me and my household, 10 ng aking kamag-anak incorporated, kasama po sila. Joshua faces the whole of Israel and tells them, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And as we serve God as a family, we know that we have an eternal importance. Joshua knew Israel's covenant with God. In Deuteronomy, it says, Israel, what does the Lord require of you? He knew God's requirement for them was to fear the Lord their God, walk in all his ways, love him, and serve the Lord. With what? With my hands, with my talents, with my gifts? No. Serve the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. And you know what, mga kapatid? The pact that Joshua did with God created a great impact in the world, because we read in Joshua chapter 24, verse 31, Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua. And all the days of the leaders who outlived Joshua had known all the work that the Lord did for Israel. Do our children know what God is doing in our lives? Do our children aware of the little hurdles that we face every day? Do our children know that God remains faithful through each and every portion of our life that we live here on earth? Because a pact with God makes an impact in the world. Kamusta po tayo, mga kapatid? The Lord will never miss out on his portion of our pact with him. You want to preserve the homes? You want us to be taken out of the endangered species list? Make that pact with God. As Joshua implored upon his people, choose you this day whom you will serve. What do? Let's make a choice. Let's make a choice, mga kapatid. You want the family preserved? It's in our hands. Inasmuch as the pawikan, the monkey-eating eagle, and the tamaraw are now being caged and propagated and helped so that they will not get into extinction. The role of the preservation of the family is in our hands, because God will always remain faithful. Let's make a choice today.